into it. All right, cool. So, hey everyone, welcome to tonight's presentation on graduating into pediatric private practice. My name's Joe. I'm one of the physios at NAPA Centre Sydney. Tonight, I'm joined by a few of my colleagues to take you through all like the ins and outs of pediatric private practice and what you need to know on your transition out of university. Thank you, firstly, for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us, and hopefully we can shed some insight into this really rapidly growing area of therapy, and um, also into helping the lives of the kids and the wonderful families that we work with. So to start off, just a few housekeeping points. As I mentioned, this presentation is being recorded, and the recording link and the presentation slides will both be sent out to you guys who have registered in the coming days. In case there's a technological malfunction, which we should be right with, if you'd like to take notes, please feel free. The initial part of the presentation, we're hoping will go for around 40 minutes, and then we'll move on to the Q&A section. So we're going to have the chat open tonight throughout the presentation, and this is where we'd like you guys to send any questions that you may have in regards to the content being discussed, or just any general questions you have about pediatrics. Thank you to those who have already sent through some questions. We're going to have a moderator behind the scenes kind of sifting through all the questions as we go, so at the end of the night, we can run through the questions without too much overlap. So make sure to ask your questions as we go. That way we can be as comprehensive as possible and answer as many questions as the time permits. So we're going to hopefully wrap up by around 7 o'clock. Just towards the end of the session, we'll be making an announcement about our NAPA new graduate program. So please stay tuned for this. And throughout the presentation, we're going to have some videos to play for you all. So all your cameras and microphones should have been turned off. If for some reason your camera or your microphone is still on, please switch them both off, just so that we can make sure there's not too much lag with the content we're showing. These videos are just links to videos that we've put up on our YouTube account. So you'll be provided with those links in an email along with the slides in the coming days. Cool. So let's get into it. Graduating into private pediatric practice. An overview of tonight's presentation. So we're going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction into ourselves and into the presenters that you guys will be meeting tonight. A little bit of an introduction into pediatric therapy as well, and the fields within pediatrics, the disciplines within pediatrics. Give you guys a little bit of an insight into a day in the life of a pediatric therapist, and particularly a day in the life of a therapist here at NAPA. And then we'll chat about our new grad program before we get into our Q&A. Just a reminder, all our newcomers, cameras and mics off, please, just to save some lag. Thank you. All right, cool. So little introduction into tonight's presenters. So these will be myself, Zoraida, Mara, and Danielle. So Zoraida is one of our occupational therapists at NAPA Sydney. Mara is our occupational therapist manager in NAPA Melbourne. And Danielle is one of our speech and language pathologists here in NAPA Sydney as well. We also have online Paul Posabon, who is the managing director of NAPA Australia, which covers our Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane clinic, as well as Ali Gebhardt, who is our clinical director for NAPA Sydney. So I'll start first. I'll give you guys a little bit of an introduction to me. So I'm Joe, I'm a physio. I've been working both as a physio and at NAPA. I came here as a new grad, so I've been here for almost 4 years. I studied at University of Newcastle and graduated end of 2019. Things that kind of drew me to pediatrics were, or to be honest, when I was studying, I worked at a therapy aide, at a pediatric private practice in Maitland up near Newcastle. Worked there for about 2.5 years, and I really, really hated it, honestly. I spent the 2 years going, pediatrics isn't for me, and I kind of closed myself off to this kind of industry. I was fortunate enough to get a prac here at NAPA in my final year of uni. And I was here for 5 weeks. And after 2 weeks, I had completely changed my mind and my perspective on pediatrics. And I was ready to become a physio here at NAPA. So that's a little bit of insight onto me. Zoraida, I might throw to you and let you give a little bit of an introduction, please.
I think Zoraida's struggling with audio things.
Okay, cool. Mara, do you want to go then, and I'll send Zoraida a
Sure.
message so that she knows?
Sure. Hi, I'm Mara. I have been an occupational therapist for 10 years now. I went to school in Buffalo, New York. I'm from America originally. And I always knew I wanted to work with kids. So that was like a given. But I started off working in schools and then private practice with autism and sensory processing disorders. But I always really knew I wanted to work with neurological disorders and physical disabilities. And so when I heard about NAPA, I was very excited. And I've been with NAPA for 6 years now, and I've been in Australia for about 2. So, yeah.
Amazing. Danielle, do you want to give a little bit of an intro onto you and your career so far?
Yes, thanks, Joe. Yes, hi everyone. I'm Danielle. I'm one of the speechies at NAPA. I'm also a new grad, one of the new grad speechies at NAPA too. I studied my undergrad at Macquarie doing speech hearing language sciences, and then I completed my degree with a master's in speech pathology at UCIT. I, similar to Joe, didn't really have an interest in working in pediatrics at first. I thought I was fully set on working in the hospital. Rehab was the way to go, until I was doing part-time support work during uni. I fell in love with working with kids in general, and also then fell into the beautiful world of working with children with complex communication needs, particularly in the field of disability. And then the rest was history, essentially. I have loved it ever since, and I've been working at NAPA for about a year and a half now.
Amazing. I'm going to try for Zoraida one more time. If she's still having technical issues, then we might move on to our next bit. Zoraida, do you want to try and chime in? All right, no worries. Guys, we're going to go on to our next bit. Zoraida, just to give a bit of an intro, is also one of our OTs. She started here as a new grad as well, and has been with NAPA for about 3.5 years. So she started a few months after I did, and she is absolutely fantastic at what she does. She is made for pediatrics, and she's one of our crucial team members here at NAPA Sydney. So hopefully she can get on a bit later so you guys can hear from her more. What we're going to do now is we're going to get into pediatric therapy. Let's chat about the best industry in the world, which of course is a completely unbiased opinion. I'm going to hand back to Mara so that she can talk to you guys a little bit more about what pediatric therapy is.
So obviously pediatrics is working with children. But when you're working with children, one of the things you really need to consider is that you also are working with their families, their carers, they say the saying, it takes a village. So we really are not just working with one person, we're working with a whole like family unit. And the more we can keep that in mind and keep everybody in the loop and working together, the better results you're going to see in your therapy sessions. Every child's team can have many different professionals working. You have allied health therapists, physios, OTs, speech therapists, psychologists, dietitians, neurologists, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. At NAPA, we are just a small section of all of the specialists that a child may be seeing, depending on what their disability is and what their needs are. We have physios, OTs, and speech therapists who work at NAPA. Sorry, that petered out a little bit. But yeah, so we communicate with other members of the team. We collaborate with psychologists, with specialists, with orthotists, and that's really a very important part of the job too. So the main point is we're just one piece of a bigger picture. And at NAPA, we see many different diagnoses. These are some of the common ones that you have probably heard of. Cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, autism. I'm not going to read through the whole list. You can read. But the list of diagnoses that we do see is endless. We honestly have some kids who have diagnoses that are 100, 200 cases in the world, all the way. Yeah, so you're going to have a huge variety of kids at NAPA that will give you the chance to learn about something that it might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah. And I'm going to hand over. Do we know if we have Zoraida?
We don't. I can jump in from here.
Okay. I'm going to pass
amazing.
back to Joe then.
Cool. Thanks, Mara.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Mara makes some really good points. Like, part of being a therapist is you see so many really amazing families, amazing kids, but some really cool diagnoses as well. Some of them are incredibly rare and some of them are a little bit more common. What I want to chat through though is kind of the fields within pediatrics and give you guys an idea that the pediatrics is a big umbrella, but there's lots of specifics within that and specific fields and disciplines. So we obviously have our private sector, which can, I'll start with our public sector. We have our public sector, which can involve, inpatients, outpatients, and community. This can be both in the forms of acute rehab and also ongoing chronic rehab. We then have our private disability sector. So this can be both general population and it can also be specific population. And within one of the specific populations which NAPA operates under is the disability sector and the private disability sector. So to talk more about the private disability sector, it is typically funded with NDIS if the child is an NDIS participant. So 95% of our clients here at NAPA are NDIS funded. Therapists typically work in outpatient clinics or within the community. So this can be in the child's home, in their school, where the therapist more travels to them. Therapists can work both individually, they can work within a team or within a large company of a single discipline, or within a multidisciplinary team or company where there's multiple professions under one roof. And therapy goals within the private disability sector revolve solely around the client and their family and where they feel the most need, I guess, and the most benefit for their child is. So we kind of mentioned NDIS. NDIS is a very complex system, but it is fantastic. And essentially NDIS funding aims to improve participants' daily life and their participation by providing kind of that funding directly to that individual. So it has improved the lives of people living with a disability by providing more access to therapy, greater intervention than ever before. And we work closely, as our roles as professionals, we work closely with the child and their goals, assess, reassess these goals, and demonstrate growth and development in the form of reports to submit back to NDIS to hopefully receive more funding so that child can continue to receive more therapy. In an NDIS plan, parents will come up with goals alongside their child to determine kind of general areas of development that they would like to target. For example, in this case, so we have a short-term goal. So Jane and John would like Jill to continue to build on her physical independence. It's quite a generic goal. And then within that, the parents have how they will achieve that. So what they would like NDIS to assist them with in terms of providing function, but also funding to support that. And then these NDIS goals help support the therapy goals that we write. So we'll get into more about NAPA later, but NAPA, we operate under an intensive model of therapy as well as with weekly clients. So we might write a goal for Jill, who wants to build on her independence, some goal that she'll demonstrate improved core and lower limb strength by stepping up a 10-centimeter step with assistance at her feet. So that's an example of how a child's NDIS goal can then relate to their therapy goals. So it's important that the parents work with their NDIS planners to come up with different strategies to help the child achieve that goal, and that then the family relays that to the therapist. And for us here at NAPA, it's our job to then come up with an even shorter term goal that's going to help that child progress towards their overall NDIS life goals. Here we have a more speech focused goal, and this is a bit more of a medium to long term goal. So Jane and John would like Jill to continue to build on her language and communication skills. So very general, very broad, and then within the steps of how they will achieve that goal, that's going to help both the family but also the treating therapists determine what specific therapy goal they might have for the time that they're seeing that child. And that's obviously going to be impacted also by where that child is currently at in their level of development. So in terms of employment within pediatric private practice, there's two main types that you're probably going to come across as you enter the private space and the private sector. The first of these is employment, and the second being contract. So employment, you get paid by the hour. You normally work consistent hours during the week, so 38 hours a week, full time. And within those 38 hours, you're paid to see clients, but you're also paid to complete admin, training, professional development. So you get paid when you're not face to face with the child or with the client. So it gives you more opportunity for training and development as a therapist, as well as being able to have a really clear-cut work-life balance. The flip side of that is contract, where you're contracted by the company and you're only paid for the hours that you're billing clients. So these are, face-to-face therapy, report writing, things like that. So sometimes, you're note taking, for example, any training or additional training you do, follow-up calls with specialists. There are other aspects of the reports that aren't charged. These aren't always billed, and therefore you complete them in your own time and you don't get paid for that. You only get paid for the hours that you see the kid. So within that, you don't get sick leave, you don't get annual leave, but it does provide you, when you're contracted, it does provide you a little bit more flexibility and control over how you use your own time, because you're not set within that. You must work the 38 hours each week. You can kind of control your own schedule a little bit. So I think this is something to really look out for when you're interviewing for different roles. As a new grad, it's really, really important to find a supportive role that gives you opportunity to train and learn on the job without the financial stress caused by, cancellations, illnesses, and scheduling. So here at NAPA, we're employed as direct employees, which, like any employment arrangement, has salary and full benefits with annual leave, personal leave, and all those other common protections under employment law. So our managing director regularly interviews graduates 6 months into their career as they're looking for a new position, because the initial job that they accepted wasn't what they thought it would be. So often this is kind of caused by they hadn't considered all the factors that we'll go through tonight, and they've realized that the role isn't as supportive as they would have liked as a new grad moving into the space as a clinician. So it's best to know what you're looking for and what you want from the get-go, so that you can settle into working life as seamlessly as possible. So that's kind of an overview of the private disability sector in particular. What we're gonna talk about now is move more into the discipline space. So you guys are stuck with me for the next little bit as we talk about everything physio. So physiotherapy within pediatrics. If you have a look at this pie chart, which is taken from the Physio Principle Scope of Practice in 2019, surprise, surprise, we've got the musculoskeletal sector making up just over 50% of physiotherapists working. And you can see through the colours that pediatrics takes up a fairly small percentage, so only around 5% back in 2019. So it's quite a niche area, particularly in physiotherapy, but it's also a growing space. And I'd personally be really, really interested to see the current statistics in 2023, because I think it would have grown a little bit while still being quite niche. We're definitely seeing more and more physiotherapy practices, but also clinicians working in pediatrics in general. So those of you who might not have had a pediatrics placement in your uni days, you might be wondering what we actually do as physios in peds. So, our practice is guided, as in every practice, it's guided by our assessment that you will have learnt over your last few years at uni. Within this, we use our ICF framework to guide our assessment on body structure and function, activity and participation levels. So those of you that were at uni and thought, oh, they're harping on about the ICF model, it's actually super important, and it really plays a part in what we do as clinicians. So from this assessment, we then work on prescribing goal-orientated exercises, and being in the ped space, of course, we have to make it fun and engaging at the same time, right? Like, we're working with kids. They don't want to just stand there and do 5 squats. We need to also think about prescribing equipment. So this could include walking frames, standing frames, and orthotics, to again maximize body structure and function, activity and participation levels as well. So here we have like a simple case study. A 3-year-old child is diagnosed with developmental delay and cannot walk. The typical age to start walking is 12 to 18 months. Parents want to work on walking, so a therapist may assess that child's impairments. So some possible and quite common impairments that we see in pediatrics are things like reduced strength. So this can be upper limb, lower limb, quite often core, and that's a big one that can easily be missed, and it's very, very important and critical to our function. Generally decreased endurance. This can be both muscular endurance, but also cardiovascular and cardiorespiratory endurance, difficulties with balance and motor coordination, reduced trunk and pelvic stability and the ability to maintain balance, delays with motor patterning or delayed motor control, dissociation, which is, your ability to move one part of your body while stabilizing with the other rather than everything moving in this big brick. And often we also see, difficulties with proprioception and decreased safety awareness too. So it's important, just because you're a physio doesn't mean you have to think gross motor. We need to be treating holistically, and quite often that's going to incorporate a lot of our sensory systems and our other senses as well. So based on the impairments and the goals, we can then prescribe exercises accordingly. So for example, reduce lower limb strength. If we specify that it's primary, gluteal weakness, we might prescribe tall kneeling activities or sit to stands. And if they're in their limitation is endurance, we might utilize the treadmill for treadmill training, and things like that. But given that we're in peds, we can also get really creative in working through impairments such as motor patterning. For example, a kid finding it difficulty with navigating a slide, we can try and replicate that setup in our equipment and teach them how to navigate it in a safe environment so that the next time they go to a park with mum or dad, they're at reduced risk of injury and they're also maximizing their independence and their function. Last thing from me about physios. Now, last year when we did this presentation, we received some feedback wanting to hear more about titling within physiotherapy to become an APA titled pediatric physiotherapist. I'm not going to go into too much details. It's not really that relevant in your early years of your career, but essentially there are 2 avenues. So one is academically, through a postgraduate or a master's degree, and the second is more experiential and based on your clinical experience. So as a physio in the pediatric space, you have to be APA titled to call yourself a pediatric physiotherapist, exactly the same as you have to be a titled sports physiotherapist or cardiorespiratory physiotherapist if you want to call yourself that. If you don't have a title, and this applies to me, then you're just a physiotherapist in pediatrics or a physiotherapist in sports or whatever industry you are in. You can't advertise yourself as a pediatric physio. So you definitely don't need to be titled to work in that chosen field. The title is just a benchmark of physio practice, right? So it's a measure of career progress for APA physiotherapists, and it's protected by national law. But that's just a little bit around the titling process. Not as relevant in your early years of your career, but certainly something to consider if you'd like to explore that path down the track. Anyway, I'm going to hand back to Mara to discuss everything OT.
All right. So OT, the layout of OT is quite different than physio, as Joe is saying. Like, pediatric, very small part of physio, but it is a very large part of OT. Pediatric OTs make up 20% of the OTs in Australia, and which makes it actually the most popular scope of practice. So obviously there are other different areas too, ranging from geriatrics to rehab to ergonomics and work safety to hand therapy, etc. But yeah, pediatrics is a big one. Next slide. And then the thing about OT that I often hear is like, what does OT even do? And the answer to that is variable. OT can do a huge number of things depending on the setting you're in, the clients you're seeing, the goals you have, etc. And just some of the things that we do as pediatric OTs specifically include assessment, including standardized assessments, observational assessments, parent interviews, all of that kind of stuff, creating, similar to physio, creating treatment plans that are addressing family goals, NDIS goals, and using those to guide us towards an appropriate treatment plan. OTs can work on feeding. It can work in some visual motor integration. It can do a lot of work in sensory processing and regulation. Can assist with behavior and self-regulation strategies. Obviously, everybody, if they've heard of OT, knows that OTs will work with hand strength, fine motor skills. Also work with dressing, ADL skills. Really, like, I could just keep going on and on. But really, the big thing is, I think the most important thing is that OT, it should be very client-centered and holistic. You are going to talk to your family, talk to your clients, talk to their team, and really try to hone in on what specifically is impacting their ability to access and engage fully in their chosen occupations, school, leisure, self-care, etc. And picking what things are going to really help that child become more independent, become more autonomous, become more able to just engage in the world. And that can just look like so many different things for so many different children. Yeah.
Amazing. Thanks, Mara.
I'm gonna Danielle, I think, is going to talk about speech next.
Yes, beautiful. Great. Just like what Joe and Mara were saying, in the same way, speech pathology covers a range of different practice areas. Speech pathologists are not registered under APRA, unlike OTs and physios. So finding accurate data is slightly more challenging than for PTs and OTs, lucky us. This pie graph is actually from 2015, so as part of a snapshot from Pathologists Australia organisation, and it noted an increasing shift in the way speechies are moving towards the private sector. So as you can see there, private practice constitutes about 52.6%, so more than half the percentage of working speech pathologists as of 2022. As you can see, speeches cover a range of areas. We can work in early intervention, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, from trauma services to mental health, and the list goes on. Next page. Just like what Mara was saying, the speech pathology practice areas cover so many things. I could go on and on about each one here. As much as I'd like to bore you all night about each one, I'm just going to quickly go through just a few that we touch on at NAPA. So for speech, what that might look like at NAPA is really working on the execution and the production of speech sounds. This could be through the motor planning, how they're able to sort of coordinate the movements of their jaw or their lips or their tongue to be able to produce sounds. And also working on the understanding of what speech sounds are. For language, this really works on understanding the use of words and understanding what words actually mean in context to a social interaction. AAC stands for Augmentative and Alternative Communication, which is just a fancy term for a communication aid or an aid to support communication. So an example of that would be switches, eye gaze, or a visual communication board. The picture that's presented here is a beautiful example of AAC in the works with one of our beautiful kids using an iPad with a language system that enables her to do some choice making with some pictures. So that would be an example of a high-tech visual communication board. And we focus on that a lot also at NAPA. The next one is multimodal communication, which is pretty much also another fancy term for using multiple modes of communication. This includes vocalizations, gestures, and sign language. The next is voice, so working on vocal quality, compensatory strategies. It is pretty ironic that my voice is also disappearing as a speechy, so I'll have to do a bit of voice therapy tonight for myself as well. Next is fluency. We don't usually touch too much on this at NAPA, only given, I guess, provided that, we work in collaboration with parents. And usually at NAPA, we have a focus of functional goals. What goals are going to provide the most impact and the most meaning to their daily lives? And we find that, stuttering is also something that can impact life, but we generally work towards building speech sounds or their speech sound intelligibility or their ability to be understood by others as well. And the last one there is feeding and swallowing. This could be covering the way a child interacts with food, their understanding, how they're able to understand the senses of food, and also how they're able to manipulate food in their mouth. Are they able to swallow? Are they able to control where their food goes in their mouth? So teaching these skills essentially is one of the things that we do at NAPA as a speechy. Beautiful. So speech pathology in pediatrics. I'm just going to go through a quick case study example of something that we would do in our day-to-day speechy day work at NAPA. So a 3-year-old child is diagnosed with developmental delay, does not talk, and is a fussy eater. The child does not talk, but uses body movements, gestures, and pointing to communicate. The typical age to start saying their first words is 12 to 18 months. Parents want to work on the child's ability to talk and increase variety in their diet. So a speech therapist may assess the child's impairments. So if we go into, this page, there are a couple of things that we could focus on. So as I was saying before, we could work on focusing on the motor control of speech sounds. So what this might look like is really focusing on those oral structures. And by that, I mean their lips, their tongue, and their jaw. This could be a factor as to why they might be delayed. We could also consider their respiratory support, so their ability to sustain a vocalization. And what I love about working as a speechie at NAPA is that it's multidisciplinary focused. So this is where I would sort of turn to Joe, or this is where I would turn to Mara about in terms of how am I best able to engage their core, or what positioning will allow them to be able to sustain, a vocalization best. So in addition to that, we could also focus on strength and tone, which also goes back to, talking to my, physio and OT gurus about that as well. Some cognitive factors, we could consider their ability to understand meanings of words. So as I was saying before, we really focus on language. Are they delayed in language because they're not able to understand instructions? And how we can then best build their expressive and receptive vocabulary as well. Sensory awareness, so this is referring to the awareness of movement and their function, and psychosocial factors such as their previous experiences with foods that might actually be impacting the way they eat. So it does cover a range of things, which is also in the beauty of speech pathology. But yes, if you do have any other questions, or if there are any other interested new grad speeches out there, please do shoot us a question in the chat as well. I'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Beautiful. So I'm going to pass it back to you, Joe, to touch on what we do here at NAPA.
Cool. Thanks, Danielle. Cool. So yeah, overview of NAPA. So as I mentioned earlier, we're a pediatric private practice. We're multidisciplinary, so we have physio, OT, and speech services. We offer both weekly and intensive therapy programs, and this is mainly to children with complex neurological conditions and developmental conditions as well. In terms of our mission statements and our mission as a company and as an organization, we're really dedicated to trying to provide and deliver innovative therapy to children. So we're striving to kind of provide these children and their families as well. We have to work on improving the life of the whole family as well as just the child by offering, hope and giving services in a playful environment that enables these kids to maximize their full developmental potential. So you can see on the right-hand side of the page, we have locations, 3 in Australia. We have Sydney, Melbourne, and as of last week, Brisbane has just opened, which is super exciting. There are 5 clinics in the States. Los Angeles, which was the first clinic that was open. There's also Boston, Austin, Denver, and Chicago. And the final clinic that will be opening later this year will be in London, which is very, very exciting. Just to go back to what intensives are. So intensives are 3-week programs. So these run daily. And these can consist of anywhere between 1 to 4 hours of therapy for a child each day. So the child's going to participate in recommended disciplines according to, their age, their diagnosis, goals, their tolerance to therapy. If you want to dumb it down, it's basically personal training at the gym for up to 4 hours each day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, which is super intense, right? So we then repeat that all over again. So we do intensives back to back year round. So we're currently in the middle of week 2 of a current intensive. And some of these kids do up to 3, 4 intensives a year, again, depending on a number of different factors. But you can see that's a lot of therapy in a very short period of time, which is why we are so known for getting good results in what we do. And why it's really, really important to make sure that we are addressing each child's, specific goals. So as you can see, it's a very exciting and global team to be a part of, and there's so many opportunities, and we're always growing. As I mentioned, we opened Brisbane last week, London later this year, so it's all very exciting. And personally, I can't wait, and I know NAPA can't wait to see where it takes us as an organisation. Right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to follow and watch a little bit of a video to one of our physios, Nicole, on a tour of her day. So as I mentioned earlier, these links will be sent out to you guys in the coming days. we're going to watch a video in full. If for some reason it doesn't work or we have technical difficulties, please just pop it in the chat. Fingers crossed the computer gods are kind to us, but we should be right. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all. And we are going to follow Nicole in her day as a physio.
Alrighty, Liam, let's go. No, look, the monkey's there. The monkey? We need to go get the monkey. We need to save it. This is Mr. L. So what we're doing is we're practicing walking with the beam in the middle. So he's got really strong adductor spasticity. So we're trying to use this to limit his legs from touching midline. Should we go? You're shaking. Good. I'm alive. And I'm gonna use my big hands. Boom, boom, two for a King Kong, 0 for monkey. See, what we're trying to work with her is her ability to walk. So what we're trying to do is doing really targeted steps, trying to narrow her base of support, and also encourage that hip and knee flexion so that she's clearing curbs in the pavement. My desk, and this is where I have my duck hour, and I'm going to be writing my reports and my notes. When you're ready. So this is Miss A, and what we're going to do on the Galileo is we're going to work on her shoulder stability and her upper leg strength. Alright, should we switch it on? And we go all the way up. Good job. We're going to hold for 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, strong arms. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and coming. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
All right, apologies, everyone. I stuffed up and I know there wasn't any sound at the start. Won't happen on the second video. We're going to jump back into the presentation. So that's a bit of an insight into a day in the life of a NAPA therapist. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to throw to Paul. Paul, I might let you chat further about more of the role expectations that you as managing director would have of a NAPA therapist, and probably more specifically for these guys for a NAPA graduate and what their role might entail.
Fantastic. Can you guys hear me? My video seems to be lagging. Here it is.
Good.
Hello, everyone. Thank you all for being with us tonight. It's an exciting time in your journey as a graduate or about to graduate therapist. I will tell you that there's nothing to be worried about in terms of moving into your first year. We did this program. We've been taking graduates at NAPA for quite a while, but in terms of this process and doing these presentations, last year was the first time we did this. And out of this process last year, we have we have the most extraordinary batch of graduates that have come through and who are absolutely killing it in their first year of treating in the real world. So they're doing really, really well. So there's nothing to be scared about. And we're super excited to hopefully get some applications from some of you guys following this presentation and over the coming weeks as well. So my job here is to talk you through a little bit of in terms of what the graduate role looks like at NAPA. As Joe indicated earlier on, you'll typically work a full-time role here, which is a 38-hour week. At NAPA, that looks like 3 8-hour days and 2 7-hour days across the week. So you will have, we do start our days quite early at 8 a.m. and have a shortened lunch break. So we do get out at 4:30 or 3:30. And in general sense, mostly you should be able to achieve all of your work within those hours as well. Built into that 38-hour week is obviously treatment and face-to-face time. But also importantly, at NAPA, we build into your schedule enough time to get the stuff done, the other bits and pieces that the guys have been talking about, such as your documentation hours. You get an hour of documentation built into your schedule every single day, as well as 2 days a week, you'll get an additional hour of documentation built in. So that's an opportunity for you to catch up on things, start preparing, make some phone calls, look ahead, reread an article, whatever you may do a bit of extra prep. Built into your schedule is also what we call a NAPA Grow Hour every single week. That's about self-directed learning for you to, read an online article, read a magazine article, go down and spend some time on the floor with a senior therapist or perhaps a therapist from a different discipline, etc. We also have a team meeting, which is predominantly around structured PD as well, or training, as well as you'll have your direct supervision built into your schedule as well. In terms of caseload, I know that's a big question for graduates, and it should be a big question for you, no matter whether you apply for NAPA or you apply for any role. You should be asking what your caseload is going to look like, because as Joe said to you earlier, I spend a lot of time interviewing grads who 6 months into their role are struggling because they are literally treating a full caseload 1 week or 2 weeks into their first year. That doesn't happen at NAPA. In fact, at NAPA, you're not going to be expected to have a full caseload until somewhere in the second half of your first year. So somewhere between 6 and 9 months of working at NAPA. In fact, you're going to have no or very limited independent treatment sessions during your onboarding period, which goes for 12 weeks at the start of your 12 to 15 weeks, sorry, at the start of your career at NAPA. You'll be doing a lot of shadowing at the start and a lot of treating alongside a senior therapist, which really enables you to really grow into the role and transition from your learning life into your treating life. And then following that, once you are finished your official onboarding or training period with us, that doesn't mean we fill you up straight away at NAPA either. We will graduate your caseload based on your strengths and based on how you are adapting to the treating to being on the treating schedule. So your treating schedule will graduate over time as well. As I said, you can expect to have a full caseload around the 8-9 month mark. And what that looks like at NAPA, once you do have a full schedule, is around 27 kids per week in your schedule out of a 38-hour week. So that's roughly what we'll be looking at. Our graduate program is quite structured, so we have a very structured way of doing it in line with, kind of what's out there as well. You'll generally start on a starting salary of $68,000 plus superannuation of 11%, which will take you around to the mid 70s in terms of total package and stuff like that. There's other bits and pieces that fall into the benefits of what it's like to work in NAPA, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And then we have Christmas bonuses and productivity bonuses that step in after your first year at being NAPA, so it steps in as part of your second year as well. All right. Some of those extra bits and pieces that we do at NAPA that we really feel, the internal programs that we think set us above and beyond, some of our competitors and what you might encounter out there, is we've got a whole heap of these internal programs which are very, very important and vital and part of the fabric of what it means to be a NAPA therapist. I'll talk through some of them now. I'm not going to go into major detail into all of them, as it will be here all night. But Hatch is our internal entrepreneurship or innovation program, where any therapist from across the world can submit ideas for improving the way we do therapy, for equipment ideas, any idea that they may have that thinks that we might deliver better level of care to our children. You can submit that and get funding to sort of make that happen. We've just finished our first Hatch program across the world. Actually, it's a worldwide program across all our clinics, and really excited to implement the winners of that into our program over the next year. The first major innovation that's coming out is 3D printing, which we're really excited to be integrating across all our clinics and developing things to assist with mobility and disability services as well. Bump is our enhanced maternity program, where we further enhance, obviously, wherever you work in the Australian workplace, you are entitled to government entitlements when you do choose to have a baby, but Bump is NAPA's way of adding to that and further incentivizing that, so that ideally we want you returning to work after you've had your baby, your first baby or your second baby, whatever it may be. So Bump is another level of benefits that sits above what the government may give you. SNAPS is our internal recognition program. SNAPS is about colleague to colleague or peer-to-peer recognition of some of the things that you see that they might do well. Obviously, we're leaning on our American heritage there in terms of giving snaps to our colleagues for doing great stuff in the workplace. We reward people with things like, obviously, rewarding their anniversaries, rewarding 5-year anniversaries with gifts and stuff like that, as well as, on-the-spot recognition with coffee vouchers and stuff like that when you see a colleague doing something really well. Away is a really exciting program that Joe's talked about in terms of our international program. Not only do we do occasional pop-up clinics where we might do a pop-up clinic in a state or an area that we don't necessarily have a clinic, and give opportunity for therapists to travel and do those pop-up clinics. But we also have part of our away policy is the fact that we have the opportunity, being an international organization, to give opportunities for you to grow or get a promotion or to transfer to any of our clinics internationally. Obviously, there's criteria around doing transfers and stuff like that, but there's not many organizations out there that will give you that opportunity to transfer to another state or transfer, in fact, to another country while still working for the same organization. A great example of that is that one of our current physiotherapy supervisors is about to sadly leave our Sydney clinic, but she's taking up the role of clinical director in the new NAPA London, which is opening, as Joe said, later this year. So super exciting opportunities. As Mara mentioned in her introductions, she came from our NAPA US clinics and has found a home in NAPA Melbourne there. So, we do have that great opportunity to offer those opportunities for you to move across the globe or across the state as well. Glow is all our wellness bits and pieces that we do to make working life bearable. It's the fun things like, chocolate jars and fruit bowls in the workplace and things like that. It's the social events, it's the social calendar. We're a very, very social group at NAPA. We have a lot of social events and Christmas parties and Christmas gifts and all that sort of stuff. But a big part of our Glow program is our wellness voucher, and that's a monthly voucher that you can use, or a monthly allocation, I should say, that you can use towards something that is inherently for you to look after your wellness. And that can mean a different thing. We don't dictate what that looks like. We don't make you go and join a gym or whatever it may be. We want you to use that in a way that helps your wellness. So that might be going and doing a pottery class so you get your minds off things, or it might be a gym membership, or it might be going to see a psychologist, or it might be going to see a physiotherapist, or going and get a massage. It's just something that's really for you to look after your wellness, and you have a monthly allocation to do that as well. And the two sort of final programs are Grow. Grow I kind of touched on before in terms of it's our learning and development platform. So you get external PD budgets at NAPA. You'll have built-in training and development in your schedule every week, which is either discipline specific or clinic wide, as well as the weekly grow hour built into your schedule to do self-driven learning. As well as that, we also have a grow week every single year across our clinics, where we do a whole heap of training and development every afternoon for a whole week. So that's a big part of the fabric of working at NAPA. And LEAD is one of our new internal programs, which is a whole sort of structure around when it does come time for you to start. I know you're not thinking about it right now being graduates, but when it does come time for you to start thinking about moving into supervision roles or training roles or whatever it may be, we're going to support you with the training and the development that you need to do that effectively. So that's the LEAD program. I'm going to throw back to Joe. He's going to bring it home.
Amazing. Thanks, Paul. So yeah, we're gonna get talk through as Paul mentioned, an exciting initiative for grad therapists and for new grads in 2024, which is our NAPA Australia's new grad program. So as Paul mentioned, we've run our first year of the new grad program this year. We're currently in the middle of it, and we've opened up a new graduate position in each discipline, so physio, OT, and speech pathology, across our Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane clinics. So this program will provide, continued tailored and structured support across the 12 months that you are a new graduate, and then employment will roll into continued employment, obviously pending performance throughout the program. The program runs from early February through to February of the following year. So kind of in line with what the hospital allocation timeframe is. And we're going to open applications after this presentation, and our grad webpage is live right now. So we usually do, interviews and trial days, anytime from now, really, anytime the applications start to come through, and then successful applicants will be advised, and offered contracts following their interviews. So wherever you are in your journey as a student or as a soon-to-be new grad, if this space interests you, or if you've found any space that interests you, I would highly recommend that you go out and find some experience in that specific field, right? So it doesn't have to be paid work. You can volunteer, or you can shadow a clinic or a clinician or a program of interest. You can find work as a disability support worker, an allied health assistant, a receptionist. Employers receive a lot of applications at once, and Paul would be able to attest to this, especially during this period of graduation and leading up to graduation. So you need to find things that help set you apart from everyone else that has the exact same degree, right? So this experience that you gain from any relevant work that you can get, or any relevant volunteering, it's also going to help you decide where you want to go and what you want to do without overly committing yourself to a long-term contract in an area that might not be your passion. So just keep that in mind as you finish off the remainder of your degrees, or when you start to apply for jobs as well. But anyway, what we do at NAPA, right? So our new grad program begins with a 12-week onboarding period. So these are usually broken up as our intensives are into three-week blocks. So starting with some daily onboarding and training, observing and lots of didactic learning, and in our weekly programs and also in our intensive model, getting acclimatized to the new team and the clinic and the children, etc. And you still get, obviously, as we mentioned before, your documentation time. We're slowly going to progress you within those 12 weeks. So we're slowly going to increase your confidence and your skills, both in your knowledge of the interventions that we provide here at NAPA, your discipline-specific knowledge. So you'll complete specific training if you're physio, OT, or speech, and also manual handling. So that's probably the biggest difference in pediatric therapy, is we're working with kids who have developmental delays. So we're quite hands-on here at NAPA, and we're very, very good at it. And our role and part of this onboarding period, and also the entire program, is to support you during this 12 weeks. And teach you all these skills and get you to practice. So we're not just going to throw you to the wolves. So this is the first 12 weeks of your employment, right? So you're getting paid, but you're not treating independently in this time as you're finding your feet. We're going to increase that over the next, 6 to 9 weeks. Build your confidence with identifying primary impairments, start getting you planning sessions, running exercises with guidance from a supporting therapist, and work towards you leading to intensive sessions with supervision. So you'll always have someone with you in your first 12 weeks, leading to intensive sessions, and also co-treating and working with another therapist for another 2 as you get towards the end of the 12-week onboarding. Once you so within those 12 weeks, as we kind of mentioned, you're going to build those skills, related to your manual handling, your planning and structuring a treatment session, goal setting, goal writing, being able to identify primary impairments of a child, and also building your clinical reasoning skills. We're not expecting, and no one would ever expect, a therapist to have 12 weeks of training and then be completely independent. These are ongoing things that we are going to continue to develop, and I'm continuing to develop, almost 4 years into my career. But it's laying the foundations and giving you guys a really solid building block to continue to progress from, is what's so important in this first 12 weeks. Once we get to week 13, so this is where our program kind of really kicks in. And this is where we really set ourselves apart from just any, kind of general therapist that rocks up that might have had a little bit of experience. As a graduate, you're going to get weekly mentoring, that then is going to transition to fortnightly mentoring after your 6 months are here. You're going to get that mentoring until the end of the program with a senior therapist of the same discipline. In addition to that, you'll get fortnightly supervision with a member of the leadership team that's also in the same discipline. As Paul mentioned, we have professional development on that. So you have your 3 months training, your 12 weeks. We then have our in-services weekly, our team meetings, your external PD budget, your NAPA grow time. You're going to start off, probably around 2 to 3 kids independently each day. The rest of your time, if you're in sessions, you'll be supported or you'll be co-treating, with a gradual build up to kind of a full caseload, around that 8 to 9 months. That we talked about. This is a maximum of 6 kids a day, right? So we spoke about, full caseload, probably around 27 kids a week, in a 38-hour working week. So maximum 6 kids a day. It's pretty good. And if you think about a private musculoskeletal practice where you are back to back to back and you are just hammered with patients, six a day is pretty good. We have our leadership team, quite a diverse leadership team across all disciplines, who have mentor hours built into their schedules to support the team, as well as you guys further, that you can call on if you want advice or if you need guidance in a session. And with your more complex kiddos and your more complex cases, you're going to have access to previous treatment notes. You're more than likely going to have access to previous treating therapists. You'll have supervisors there who you can call on, and other multidisciplinary team members. So we don't expect you guys to be professionals with complex kids, and complex kids can be a little bit confronting and a bit scary when you first rock up to a place like NAPA, and I can attest to that, having come here as a grad. But you're rarely the only treating therapist, and we have such a good support system in place to be able to support your skills, and also to give you guys the confidence in yourselves that you guys can do it, right? So yeah, that's kind of the program. Overall, it's very quick, but it's quite an in-depth program, and we're really conscious of not just feeding you information in this program, but building your skills that are essential to being a clinician. And these are skills that you don't learn at uni. These are skills that really help you develop your confidence and your efficiency as a therapist. And in preparation for tonight, so we spoke to some of our therapists, not just grads, but in general, and we asked them to kind of reflect on some of their learnings that they've had from working in private peds. So you'll see here that play is the child's occupation, and Mara touched on this earlier when she's talking about an occupational therapist. Play is their occupation, right? So learning to play and thinking like a kid from us is super important. Another learning, kids aren't as fragile as you think. So think about all the mischief that you got up to as a kid, all the falls you had, the amount of times you tripped and whacked your head, the scraped knees, things like that. Kids are tough. And part of our job is teaching kids that they are tough and that they are resilient. And we work with some of the most resilient kids in the world. And witnessing the hard work that goes into achieving these little inch pebbles, makes you really appreciate what we can do. You definitely become a better person in general. I'm a firm believer in that, working in pediatrics, because you see some kids who they've got it tough, and families who've got it tough, but you get to see the gratitude and the reward they get from these little achievements and these little improvements that we see day to day working in intensives. It's really fulfilling and really rewarding. Some other learnings, the child's joy and the family's joy is as much your joy. Like, we really develop that close bond with patients and with their families as well. We ride those highs and those lows with them as much as they do. There's never a dull moment when working with kids. There is every single day I come home with a story or something that one of my kids has said. And the other thing is, we're all human. We're all learning. No one knows everything. And all you guys can do as therapists throughout your career is try your best to learn more and to do better next time. So reflecting on your own experiences is so, so important. We also asked our previous new grad therapists, who you're going to hear more from in a minute, for any advice regarding the adjustments that they had to make on their transition from uni into the workforce. And this is what they came up with. So the importance of creating a healthy work and home life balance. Trying not to take work home, really setting those boundaries for yourself, being mindful about looking after your body when you're at work and you're also outside of work. So, you're going to learn to be aware of your body positions and making the conscious decision to put your body first, because as a new grad, you're at the very start of your career. You've got a long way to go before we get to retirement. So you need to be able to set yourself up and be safe, so that your career is going to last more than, a couple of weeks. We also want to make sure, and some reflections have been keeping accountable for professional growth, and the most up-to-date research is so important, right? So you're going to learn a lot, and we've shown you guys how much is going to be fed to you in these first 12 weeks, and then the remaining 12 months. But you're going to learn a lot about manual handling, your clinical reasoning, and the ins and outs of your clinic and things like that. So it's so important that there's so much more to learn, and you guys are continuing to seek that knowledge and utilize things like your NAPA Grow Time, and any external PD budget to really round you out as a therapist and to maximize your strengths, and also build on those areas of opportunity that we all have. Some of the positives being a new grad, finding a job that you love. If you're passionate about peds, please inquire more about NAPA. It is a fantastic place to be, and pediatrics in general is an awesome industry. I'm a firm believer in this second point. Anything is better than taking exams. Exams suck, and I've had the best 4 years since I last did an exam in uni. Finding lifelong friends at work who continually support you as a person, but also as a professional. We've got a great team culture here at NAPA, and it's something I'm super thankful for. There's opportunity of being more than just a therapist, right? You can utilize these different programs that we have. You can contribute to projects and take on different roles in the clinic. And you're not expected to know everything at once. And I think that's a huge positive, right? Like, the last thing you want is feeling like there's more expectation on you as a grad. So once you acknowledge that, the learning becomes so much easier and so much less overwhelming. And this is the last little bit. Now, this is a recent kind of anonymous survey that we got our current new grad therapists who are right now within the program, to reflect on their experiences since they started with us. So one of the questions we specifically asked them was, would you recommend this program to future new grads, and why or why not? Pleasingly, there's a really overwhelming response that it's been a positive experience, and these are just some of the responses we received. So I'm not going to read all of them out, but you can see the bolded words, and that first one, not one of my uni peers is getting anything of the sorts. That's something we're really proud of here at NAPA, is that we strive to become innovative, but also, lay the foundations and provide the best experiences and opportunities to graduates that we can. All right, so I'm going to correct my mistake from before. We're now going to watch a testimonial video from some of our new grads. This is a couple of minutes long, and then we will have time afterwards for questions. So let me include this one for you guys.
Basically your fundamental knowledge that you gain from uni or through placements or through tutorials. It will definitely help during your learning experience here at NAPA. Don't subconsciously push that away. Use those fundamental experiences and knowledge to complement your training here at NAPA. For example, like handling developmental milestones, normal MSK variants versus the things that will come with experience.
Everyone's more than happy to help each other out if they ask.
Now
no matter what you do, there's always something that you offer as a clinician. So it's just fine to feel overwhelmed at first, but you got this.
Believe in yourself. You know more than you think.
You're not expected to know everything.
To be physically fit to work, because when we're rolling around with the kids and picking them up, it could be lots of toll on your body.
You have to persevere, and you're going to feel like an imposter, and that's okay. And get through your first 6 months and keep on doing you, and you'll be fine.
Please be mindful how you use social media platforms. Families are so appreciative for your efforts, but always keep in mind professional boundaries.
I love how there is such a strong team culture. Everyone at this clinic is very supportive, very kind and welcoming. We have a lot of team bonding events that are super fun within the clinic and outside. And everyone's just down for a good time.
Having 3 months of training and close mentorship was really valuable, so I knew I wasn't going to be thrown in the deep end, which was really exciting.
When I first arrived here, it was really daunting, but then I found and met so many lovely people, staff, and the families are really good, and they're just really supportive. They really want to help you out here.
I love working with our team, our multidisciplinary team. I love working with the physios, OTs, speechies, music therapists, and there's soon going to be so many more other disciplines, so stay tuned.
Families, children, and all the people that I've met here will really just add sun to your rainy days.
A Lula Gold toddler has 16 vitamins.
All right, amazing. What we're going to do now is we're going to open the floor to some of the questions that have been sent through. Thank you to those that have been popping the questions in the chat, and thank you to those that have hung around as well. I know we said 40 minutes, and lo and behold, we've gone way over that. So what we might do is throw to the floor for questions. But just before we do, if you guys would like any more information around the new grad program, please use this link, which is going to take you to our website, which has all the information located there. As I mentioned earlier, our grad webpage and application process is now live. So please head to our website or Google NAPA graduate program for more information on the program and how to apply. I would strongly recommend doing this if tonight's presentation has been interesting to you, and if you're interested in a career here at NAPA. So yeah, now I'm kind of going to open the floor to any questions that have come through before we open up for the evening. Danielle, would you mind taking the lead with this one and kind of just asking some of them just for ease of time?
Absolutely. Beautiful. We might start off with the just general questions that I've been looking through in the chat. A first one comes from Elise. How much an average session would cost for a client? So I think maybe Paul, you might be the best person to answer this.
Yeah, as Joe mentioned earlier on, we predominantly serve people on the NDIS or who have NDIS funding, and therefore we are governed by the NDIS price limits. We charge $193 per session at NAPA, and that's regardless of what level of seniority the therapist that you're seeing is. It's $193 for OT, for speech, and for physiotherapy, and we build our intensives from that. So if you're doing So think about that in terms of, kids coming and doing an intensive with us, they may be doing 60 hours of therapy over a 3-week period if they're doing a 4-hour intensive. So that can be in the amount of about close to $12,000 for that 3-week intensive. But each individual session, which is a 50-minute session at NAPA, is $193.
Thanks, Paul. While you're still there as well, Elise has also asked, do you still get paid in the onboarding program as a new grad?
Yep, absolutely. You're paid from day one. So that's an investment. That is a massive investment of us in you. So we put a lot of effort into picking the right graduates, because obviously we do a lot of upfront investment into you. But yes, you are fully paid for that entire time, and all your benefits kick in from day one. The only thing that doesn't kick in is, as I mentioned earlier on, is the Christmas and productivity-based bonuses, which will kick in for your second year. But that's a level on top of your salary.
Beautiful. Great. Thanks, Paul. We might move on to some other questions as well. Haley has asked, how are clients allocated to therapists at NAPA? Is it based on availability or interest or areas of the therapist? So we've actually got Ali Jebrat, which is also one of our supporting directors at the clinic as well. We might get you to chime in to answer this question, if you don't mind, Ali.
Yeah, of course. So yes, it is. So with our scheduling, we have both intensive and weekly schedulers in each of our different clinics. They are definitely aware of therapists' interests and desires. If there's a specific therapy modality that they might be interested in training in, we can definitely be putting more interest into those modalities. There's also a lot of your interest will also drive your CPD that you do, any further learning, any further courses that you do, and also any courses that we hold in-house at NAPA. So as a new graduate therapist, you'll come on board learning the specific basics of NAPA. And then dependent on what your interests are, you might go off and, as Myra mentioned earlier, doing feeding for OT, same with our speechies, doing some feeding, doing some DMI therapy, and kind of offshooting into those different interest areas. But even with your basis of NAPA knowledge, the schedulers are aware, one of our OTs might be really interested in upper limb therapy. So, we might have a child with hemiplegia and we might, definitely go, oh, this person or this child is going to be a really good fit. So there is definitely some maneuverability with that, and the schedulers being aware of those interest areas too.
Thanks, Ali. Beautiful. And if you'd like to know a little bit more, or if we haven't answered your questions thoroughly, please also feel free to email us as well, or also just drop it in the chat. We really want to make sure that you guys are well supported as well, and you take a lot out of this presentation tonight. The next question is from Josh. Do the different therapists work in the same in-house clinic? You were wondering how would the different therapists work together to achieve the same goal for the client? So I'd be happy to answer this. Typically, most clients attend sessions across each discipline and will transition from each therapy session throughout the day. So a typical client day would look like seeing, for example, speech in the morning, then physio, and then OT. So short answer, yes, we all work in the same in-house clinic. And this is one of the things that I really enjoy about working at NAPA. And what we do in order to, provide goals for these clients is at the start of each intensive therapy block, we come on a Monday and meet together to discuss potential plan of cares for this client, any observations that we found during our sessions. Typically on the first day when we meet these families, we do general assessments, and then we raise a few other points that we might want to discuss with the physios or the OTs. So for example, from a speechy perspective, if the client has an AAC communication device, I could then ask the OTs about fine motor skills, or the postural stability or gross motor skills to a PT. In the same way, I would also provide support to PTs and OTs about how they're able to follow instructions and what sort of ways we can sort of interact them in the best possible and suitable way for the clients. If I forget anything as well, anyone else, please do chime in as well. I think I've covered everything in terms of working together to achieve the same goal. But thanks, Josh, for your question. The next question comes from, please forgive me if I pronounce this wrong, Jayawardena. How many positions are there available for each discipline for the new graduate program? Paul, if you don't mind, it might be best for you to answer the question.
Yep. I don't really have an answer for that. We are, all I'll say to that is that we're recruiting graduates across every discipline and across every clinic. So ideally, we'd like a minimum of 9 because we've got 3 disciplines and 3 clinics, but we are very much open to meeting all you spectacular graduates. And if you blow the socks off us, then we may very well take on more. Obviously, we can't take an infinite number because we want to be able to also support you and give you the experience that you deserve as a graduate and guide you through every stage that Joe talked about earlier. But we are not limited to just 1 per discipline per clinic. We are open to taking on more should we find the right candidates. And just to jump in on another question that I've seen come through, for the very reason of how intense that initial training period is and how much learning you've got to do, we don't take on graduates on a part-time basis. So we only have full-time roles for graduate roles.
Beautiful. Thanks, Paul. Our next question comes from Reva. When does the graduate program and onboarding start? Paul?
I'll jump in on that one again. So our formal graduate program commences in February of 2024. So I think it's like it's like the last week of January or the first week of February 2024. In saying that, we have done and are open to earlier starts than that. So, for example, one of the pictures that you may have seen on the screen earlier of one of the graduates that's currently going through the program, his name is Connor. He was dead keen to get straight into treating and getting into his treating life. So he started pretty much the day after he finished at university in late November last year. Yes, he didn't have his APA registration yet, but that wasn't important because he was not independently treating. And for that initial period where he was waiting for his graduation certificate to come through and his APA registration to come through, he was able to still do all his training and a lot of his onboarding stuff. So formally, our graduate program does kick off in the early part of 2024, in the last week of January, early week of February, but we can start that earlier if you are raring to go.
Thanks, Paul. Great. The next question comes from Emma. It seems that the salary is matching the public health system. Is that graded the same for bachelors versus masters? For example, master's graduate as year 1, level 3 in New South Wales health system. Would the salary match?
Yeah, so typically we follow the same sort of grading and escalation that you would expect in the public. We generally sit a little bit above that, and once you kind of layer in the other bits and pieces that will kick in your second year, like your Christmas bonus and your productivity bonus, as well as the other benefits and bits and pieces that come along with working with all the other programs that I was talking about, you'll come out generally well ahead of what the public system will offer. We do offer other bits and pieces like salary sacrificing and novated leasing and stuff like that, if that stuff's important to you as well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Paul. I think that is all the questions for you for now. The next question comes from Tim. Will there be any regular in-service or tutorials during the new grad program period? Joe, would you like to answer this question?
Yeah, sure. And I might throw to Mara as well, so that she can give Melbourne's perspective. But yes, there are. So we kind of already talked about, like the general in-services that happen in our just general trainings and meetings for all staff. But in terms of the new grad program, yes, we have specific tutorials and in-services that will be completed. It's also very led and designed to be led as well by each graduate, with where their areas of strength are, and also where their areas of interest are too, and where we feel we can support them. So Mara, I don't know if you want to jump in, but we have structured support and structured sessions, but we're also quite flexible with that too.
Yeah, I just think that in addition to like all of the regular team meetings and trainings that are just part of the regular schedule at NAPA, where we have every Monday afternoon, we have a professional development opportunity or a team meeting, or an external provider coming in to talk about something. and then the additional weekly new grad meeting that you'll have during the first 6 months, and then fortnightly after that. You're also, as we've talked about earlier, schedule is going to be slowly filling up. You're not going to just be 27 kids hitting the ground running full from the get-go as soon as you're done with training. So when you have some open spaces, and you have an interest in, say, using electrical stimulation or learning about a specific diagnosis, or a specific AAC device, and you have openings that line up with other people's availabilities, we have extra opportunities to add an additional little bits of training here and there too.
Beautiful. Thanks, Mara. Just a couple of questions left as we wrap up for the night. Question for the physios from Josh. How different will the classification and transition of levels 1, 2, and 3 be compared to that of a private practice in physio? Joe, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, cool. Josh, if you're still in the presentation, can you just clarify, do you mean in terms of like APA titling and leveling, or are you more along the path of like similar to like your hospital, like, year 1, level 3, year 1, level 4? I think that'll just depend on how I answer that question. If you're able to pop it in the chat, let me know. Otherwise, I'll just start rambling. So in terms of APA leveling and the classification transitions, that's more dependent on you actually doing the course that's run through the APA. So if you do your level 1 peds, you do the course, which I did a couple of years ago, then you're titled as you've done level 1 pediatrics course. To be a titled pediatric physio, then you need to do all 3 levels. I think the APA are actually currently revamping and redeveloping level 3 because they haven't really offered it before. So that's a work in progress, and that's just something to monitor as you kind of commence your career. In terms of like the leveling that they have in the hospital system, it's not really as relevant in private practice. In terms, Paul's kind of already touched on the salary, but your levels of experience out, is obviously going to improve, I guess, your value to the company, but also your range of clinical skills. So it's not necessarily as relevant, and kind of, like I wouldn't go around saying, oh, like I'm a year like 4 level whatever or something like that. So that's not as relevant for physio in private practice compared to the hospital system.
Beautiful, thanks, Joe. And last question from Ian. As I'm aware that peds could be very female dominated, what is the demand and supply like with male physios or other therapists in peds? Joe, would you like to answer this?
Yeah, I'll dive in. It's getting better, mate. I was on my own for a while. I reckon for about 9-10 months, I was on my own. I was the only male therapist. I still had Paul, but I was the only male therapist here. But no, in terms of supply and demand, look, yeah, it is typically a very heavily female dominated sector of disability, but no, we are having lots and lots more male therapists, and not just physios. In Melbourne, we have 2 male occupational therapists, if that's right, Paul. Yep. We've had male speech pathologists work here before. We have multiple male physios here, both in NAPA, Sydney, Melbourne, and also in Queensland. So if you decide and if you're successful that NAPA's the place for you, you're not on your own sim. But yeah, no, it's definitely increasing in terms of how many blokes are turning to P's, which is fantastic.
Yeah, I have to agree with that, and the male physios, or I mean, all physios, all therapists are very, very popular with the kids, obviously, but typically the males can develop a really, really strong rapport with the young boys that come through our clinic. They see them as a mentor, as almost like a coach, and they respond really, really well to having males. So if you're thinking about it, go for it, Ian.
And that just to piggyback off that, that's not to undervalue the value of any therapist, regardless of gender. But it's certainly nice to see those rapports building. And similarly on the other front, there are some kids and some clients that we see that don't respond well to male therapists,
Yeah,
and that's
true.
natural as part of the healthcare system too. Which is where it's fantastic to have both the multidisciplinary approach, but also just the collaboration of I guess, male and female therapists working together. And Ali mentioned about the scheduling too. You know, we can take those considerations into account also.
Thanks, Joe. I think that wraps it up in terms of all the questions. I think we've answered them all, so we might just wrap up the presentation now.
Yeah, great.
Thank you to everyone for being so patient as well.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you all so much for attending tonight. We ran a little bit longer than I thought, but hopefully, you know, we've been able to shine a light on the wonderful world of pediatric private practice and really into what we do here at NAPA. So, you know, as a former new grad, I can only sing praises, you know, of what this organization, but also this industry does for your career as a therapist. As mentioned, please head to our website for more info on the NAPA grad program. Reach out if you have any further questions. My email should be at the bottom of the Eventbrite link. If you'd like to email me, feel free. Otherwise, thank you all so much for hanging around. Have a great rest of your evenings.